All right then. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the second MPS Breeders webinar. Tonight we're welcoming over 140 people, and it's really nice that people from overseas are joining us tonight, from USA, Sweden, Canada, Finland, and Germany that we're aware of at the moment. So we've got three very interesting speakers, which are going to cover a broad and wide spectrum of breeding ponies. So we've got Joe Burke, he will talk about the traditional way in which they breed Connemara's in Ireland, and he's from the world-renowned Cashel Bay Connemara stud. And then we've got Stallion AI, who probably don't need any introduction, and they're going to talk about the modern way of breeding and how the technology is moving forward so quickly with what they're actually doing there. And then we've got Tom Blunt from the Rare Breed Survival Trust, and he will update us on what's happening there, because so many of our mountain moorland ponies are actually finding themselves on the Rare Breed Survival Trust endangered or watch list. So I just think we're going to have a great evening, and thank you everybody for joining us. And most of all, thank you to the speakers for giving up their time this evening. Okay.
And I'd just like to say to everybody that I am recording this session. We will edit it and put it up online in the next week or two. So just so that you're aware, it is being recorded.
Okay, so we'll hand over to Joe.
Perfect. Thanks very much. I've just sent my request there to be able to share, if you can see that. Okay.
Hopefully that's working for you, Joe.
Yeah, it should be there.
Yeah, perfect.
You guys can see it, yeah?
Yes.
Lovely. So first of all, thanks very much for the invitation. I have to say I've joined some of these webinars last year, and they've been just really informative. I found them really good, and some really great speakers over the last while. So it really is a privilege, to be honest, to be asked to join and just share our own kind of experiences of breeding Connemara ponies in particular. I am just going to. So, like most people on the call, I'd say when you get talking about ponies, it's kind of hard to stop. So I've set myself a bit of an agenda because I've got 30 minutes here, and I'm going to try and stick to it as best as I can. So just to start off, I'm just going to do a bit of an introduction to our stud and where we are and what it is we do, what we kind of offer to breeders. And then just an introduction to our stallions and just go through kind of the reasons why we stand so many and such a kind of a diverse gene pool of stallions. And also then kind of the main topic is just around breeding in Ireland, mostly related to Connemara ponies, being our only true kind of native breed here. And then just the kind of the cultural and economic kind of differences around breeding in Ireland versus in the UK, and kind of like what are the options that we have here that you guys don't have, and then vice versa, what you guys do that we don't do. And then just to finish up, I'll just kind of talk a little bit about our own kind of breeding goals here that we have. So just to tell you a little bit about ourselves and our stud, Clune Cattle Stud. Um, my dad started the stud probably about 45 years ago, maybe. We don't have an exact date, but he's very old, so it's a long time ago. He is still obviously very involved in the ponies. It's the two of us that do the ponies kind of between us both. Neither of us work at ponies full time. It is just a hobby for us both. Albeit he is kind of retired now, so he's more and more time to do the ponies, which is great. I'm the youngest of four. We've all done ponies and we all came up through pony club and all that. But I think I'm probably the only one that really stuck with the ponies. My brother kind of moved on to Irish drafts, and my other brother and sister aren't really as involved anymore. But I suppose I'm particularly lucky to be handed the reins to these, certainly what I think are very beautiful ponies, and this amount and this caliber of kind of stallions to be able to take that on and to kind of bring it into the next stage of our kind of stud journey. Which has kind of included myself going on to become a judge for the Connemara Society many years ago. And I'm on their panel for judging shows, also their inspection panel for both colts and fillies, as well as the Irish Pony Society and the Irish Shows Association, and some other breeds that we have here. So I've been really, really lucky then over the years to be invited to lots of different countries to judge their Connemara ponies. I think I'm at 13 countries so far, which is great, and Australia is next on my list. And then I've been invited back to lots of those countries to speak and to kind of host discussions and stuff like that around kind of breeding Connemara ponies and how to maintain type and things like that. So that's been a really, really interesting kind of learning for me as well, because just like coming on these webinars, you can kind of, always pick up something, and you never really stop learning from different people. So I'm just going to run through the list of stallions we have this year. So we actually have quite a few, and I suppose I often say that we're quite a small stud, which might be a bit misleading in that we do have like 10 stallions listed here in front of us. But in terms of space, anybody who's been to our yard knows that it's a pretty kind of medium-sized yard, but just at the back of our house, our home house here in Galway, just outside Galway City. Um, but we don't have a huge amount of land. We do own some land, and we rent a lot more. Thankfully, the stallions are able to kind of cover their own costs in that way, so it's great. But I'm just going to run through some of the different stallions. You'll see I have 8 here at the top. They're all of our kind of class 1 stallions. They're eligible for breeding, and the 2 at the bottom are 2 that I'll speak about at the end. And they're 3-year-old colts that are going up for grading this year. So we're hoping that they're quite promising and they'll be kind of next to join the list. So I'm going to run through these quite quickly because we kind of come back and touch on them all at the end. But Kirkmore Cashel might be familiar to some in the Connemara pony world. He's 26 this year, but he has been a great servant to us. He's probably one of the most prolific in-hand showing stallions. He really has won everything, including Clifton and the Royal Dublin and the All Ireland Championships. He was national champion in France when we went over to compete at the European Pony Championships in Fontainebleau. They had a breeding section there in 2012, and he was crowned European Pony Champion there. So that is him, and he's actually by Rosena Harley Rowley, who's an English bred stallion. And that's kind of a common theme that you'll see with all of our stallions, is that their breeding is quite diverse. So at the time when Kirkmore was born, there would have been a huge, I suppose, a huge dominance in Abbey Owen blood and different kind of bloodlines. But Kirkmore was completely unique at the time when he was graded. And we do have a son of his then as well, standing at stud, and that's Manor Duke. Duke is the pony that I had at Hoyes for the past couple of years. I think he's been there 3 times now, in the Price in Hand Championship at Hoyes. So he's been fantastic. He's owned by the Manor Connemara stud in Clifton. So we don't own Duke, but we're very, very lucky to have him. He was in the UK with Sam Roberts, actually, just to be broken as a 3 and 4-year-old. And when he came home for a break, he came straight to us, thankfully, and he's never left. And I think the plan is that he never will. I think he'll be with us. So he covers quite a few mares. He's been extremely successful in hand. He's won at Clifton 4 times, which is, for anybody who doesn't know, Clifton is our Royal Welsh. It's our Hoyes. It's the big one for Connemara ponies. It's the Mecca for all of our showing. It's the big highlight in our year. So Duke has always done really well there for us. So he's been fantastic. Then we have a son of his who, as I was looking for photos, I realized I really only have photos of him as a 4-year-old, from his 4-year-old season when we showed him right throughout the season. Our show season is quite different to yours in the UK in that it's much shorter. Usually our in-hand shows start in April, they finish up around September. and we usually just have maybe 1, 2 shows a week. And other than the RDS and Clifton and maybe 1 or 2 others, they're all at the weekends. So it goes Sunday to Sunday for Marble, and I think he was out about 12 or 13 times that season, and thankfully he wasn't beaten. He was either he won all of his classes and was either champion or reserve at each show. So we're really, really happy with Marble. He's up and going now, ready for his kind of ridden career, but he's actually breeding particularly well. Out of probably all of our stallions, he is the most maybe consistent in his breeding, which is consistency for us is key, and it's something I'll touch on in a few minutes. But yeah, so that's kind of put a halt to his ridden career because he's breeding quite well. Um, and then another stallion we have then, so that the first three were Carrickmore and his son Manor Duke and his son Manor Marble. And then this is a completely different bloodline then that we stand. So this is Drumbad Fletcher Moss. And he is by Fredericksminde Hazy Match and out of an Usheen mare. And Fletcher came to us after Carrickmore had been breeding for about 6 years, 7 years. And what that meant for us is that people who had bred with Carrickmore and who maybe lived locally or travelled to us, that they were able then to bring their Carrickmore cattle mares back to Fletcher. So not only was he a match genetically, because there was no cross in bloodlines, but in terms of type and what we needed for those Carrickmore cattle mares, Fletcher was able to provide. So a little bit more athleticism. Certainly they both move, and that obviously went on to the foals then as well. And then one pony that might be familiar to some, hopefully, Banks Timber. So Banks Timber was champion at Olympia back in 2018, I think. And that was after he had a fairly stellar career here in hand with us, where he had qualified for the Cuddy as it was then a couple of times with us, as well as qualifying for the Cuddy with Sandra Burton. Sandra is a great friend of ours here and has been for probably 20 or 30 years, I would say. Herself and Dad kind of started buying and selling ponies back and over, and then Sandra has bought some stallions from us, and we've owned some jointly. And then on 1 or 2 occasions where we've bought one back. So it's great to have a kind of a relationship with Sandra, who just does the ridden job so well and has had immense success with her own ponies and some of ours as well. So that's Banks Timber. And again, he was an import. We imported him at 2 years old from Denmark. And again, that was to get that completely outcrossed bloodline. So again, for those mares who were bred by Carrickmore, they came back. They then went on to breed with Fletcher, and then their daughters could come back and breed with Banks Timber. And this is a son of Timber who we got inspected. He was graded class 1 last year. He's just a 4-year-old, Derrymore Danny. And he's standing at stud with us here as well. Now, he hasn't been shown yet, but we will be moving on with him this year in the younger stallion classes. So he is by Timber and out of a kind of a fairly outcrossed mare. She's by a stallion called Craig Anya Cove. So again, constantly trying to look for that outcrossed bloodline while maintaining kind of our type and our standards, we'll say. And then another import from Denmark was last year, and this is Scare Gardens Date Night. And if that name is somewhat familiar to you, it could be because he's very closely related to Scare Gardens Delicious Love, the mare that is in the UK with Vanessa Compton at the moment. She's the only Connemara who's won both the ridden and the in-handed hoys, as well as I was going to say many others, probably everything else she's been in. She's won, and she's a spectacular mare, and this is her brother. And he's kindly on loan to us from Scare Garden Stud for this year and next. I judged in Denmark a couple of times, and I've seen a lot of his stock and was really, really interested to try and get them to Ireland because first of all, obviously it's a genetic component, but secondly, he's a pretty spectacular mover in the way he uses himself while maintaining kind of the type that we are looking for. And I think he would cross really well with our kind of more traditional mares that we have here. And then this is the final one we'll talk about now in this section, but it's Aaronmore Golden Marble. And again, he's another import, and he came from Sweden about 5 years ago. And he was a dressage pony, and he actually had only bred one foal before he came to us. Then we went on to kind of keep, he's not open to public stud. We wanted to kind of keep his bloodlines a little bit more closed so that we could get a particularly good stallion son from him, because he actually carries what's called the hoof wall separation disease. So he doesn't have it himself, but he is a carrier of it. And so instead of opening him up to public stud, we wanted to keep that a little bit more closed. We did end up breeding a really good foal that we think he's going to come out for grading this year, and I think he's really promising. And his son actually doesn't carry that gene. So trying to promote the gene pool while kind of containing those kind of failures that they might have. So hopefully we're on to kind of the next step with him as well. And then, so now on to the next topic, and I'm just conscious of the time. So if I'm rushing through, you can feel free to slow me down, but I'm just conscious that we need to keep things moving. So I suppose the main topic really is just talking about like breeding in Ireland versus breeding in the UK. And I think these all kind of fall in under like cultural differences and kind of economic differences that we have. So number one, in my mind, having obviously like lived here all my life, but having gone to the UK quite a lot, and I compete there, and know a lot of the breeders in the UK of Connemara ponies. I think that there's more of a kind of a breeding tradition here in Ireland in terms of, I would say probably 90% of people here who have a Connemara pony mare are breeders. They at some point in that mare's life they will breed, and more often than not it'll be probably every year or every second year. Whereas from my experience, a lot of the UK owners of mares, would choose to compete them first, and if a breeding opportunity comes around, they might take that, but it's not their ultimate goal, we'll say. And so I think a huge amount of pony owners in the UK wouldn't consider themselves breeders. Even if they are kind of competitors, even at a high level, but they may not always consider themselves breeders. Where I think in Ireland, everybody who owns a pony considers themselves as a breeder. And then our in-hand pony showing scene, because we do only have the one native breed, we're quite limited. We're all backed into a corner in that if you want something to show in hand, it probably has to, in the pony section, it has to be a Connemara pony, really. While we do obviously have all the other breeds here, and we do have some super show ponies, and that world is kind of growing and growing here in Ireland all the time, but it's still nowhere near the volume of shows, the volume of competition that we have for Connemara's. So I think that's a big part of it, and that's why people want to breed their mares, because typically here judges would like to see a mare with the foal foot. So that is something that kind of takes people's interest when they think of that side of breeding. And also we have a huge culture of kind of pony jumping and hunting here in Ireland. So we don't typically, you don't see the same level of like flat ridden classes as you would in the UK. Of course, again, that's growing massively here, and the standard is on the rise all the time. But I suppose the initial thing that probably the majority of children when they start riding here is that they would go jumping and that they would go hunting. And that's where your Connemara ponies come in. So a lot of people would feel that they would breed that pony rather than buy it. Another kind of a thing that really comes into it, and I think that's the geography and the travel time. So we're really lucky because, and I think this is actually plays quite a part in our success as a stud is to where we're based. So we live just outside Galway City, and for anybody who's been to Clifton, it and has come through Dublin, it takes about 2 hours to get from Dublin, 2.5 hours to get from Dublin to Galway, and then it takes about another hour to get to Clifton. And in that, you're passing through the Midlands of Athlone, which is a huge kind of a pony cohort live in that area. So you've got three main kind of strongholds in around Ireland. Obviously, ponies are dispersed right around the country, but the three main strongholds would be Connemara, and also Galway City, where we live, and the Midlands of Ireland. And luckily, we're about an hour from the Midlands, and we're about an hour from Connemara. So it's really easy for people to just jump in their car and bring their mare to us to have her covered and turn around and take her away again, which is typically what happens. So I think that we're quite well located geographically for people to get to us. So I think that plays a huge part in it as well. Whereas I know obviously if there was a stallion standing right up north or up in Scotland and you live all the way down Devon with your mare, it's a huge ask to try and travel the mare with a young foal, things like that. So there is a huge difference there. Another kind of factor that comes into it a lot, I think, is veterinary costs. It's significantly cheaper in my experience, the veterinary costs here in terms of scanning mares. I know if you have a good relationship with your vet here, I mean, scanning is typically 20, 30 euro, which is, yeah, especially if you're going to try and get a mare in foal, excuse me, and she has to be scanned a couple of times. Maybe she has an infection, she needs to be washed out and things like that. I mean, typically, a kind of a session like that, a few different visits to the vet, if you travel the mare to the vet, which most people would, in this area anyway, you're talking about maybe a couple of €100 to see her right through, to when she's scanned in full. And also the covering fees, I think, again, only in my experience, they're quite a bit cheaper here. So typically, stallions standing at stud could range from anything to like €250 to 350, €400 being the very highest really that people would pay for Connemara's. There are some that sit outside that, both on the higher end, up to 500. And there are some stallions who offer their services for less than 200, which I'm not sure if that helps the breed particularly. Um, and then the different options, we'll say, and the Connemara pony popularity here. So as I've mentioned it already, we do just have this one native breed, so your options are quite limited. We would cover quite a few thoroughbred mares, some sport horse mares, and we cover a few show pony mares for people as well to get hunter ponies. We're very lucky to have Banks Timber, who he just passes on this incredible temperament to all of his foals. So they often, when he breeds to a smaller pony and you get a smaller foal, they're perfect for children then because they have that temperament coming through. So the kind of options are a little bit limited over here as opposed to with yourselves with all the different native breeds. So I think that kind of helps in terms of the economic kind of viability of running a stud here. And then another thing that comes into it in a huge way are breeding grants. So we have lots of different breeding grants here in Ireland run by the Department of Agriculture. Um, so when you're registered as a farmer, you can claim your ponies as their rare breed under your what's called like your headage. And then you get a certain grant, a certain amount of money grant aided if that mare is in foal, and then when she produces a live foal, that foal then goes into your headage count. So you get all different kind of European funded grants through that. So that it has its pros and cons, and some of the negatives to that are that people are maybe breeding them a little bit more like cattle and aren't as concerned in terms of, like I won't say welfare, but certainly conformation, movement, breeding, the conservation of the breed, those things just don't come into it for some of those people. That's not to say them all. Some people who are receiving those grants are some of the best breeders that we have as well. But certainly, it does have an effect on the sheer quantity of foals that we have. So we've seen now that with the cattle prices going really high, that a lot of people have actually turned now to buying ponies because they can claim the same headage, but they don't have to actually have the outlay in terms of buying their replacement cattle. So that, as I said, there's pros and cons for it. Obviously, it keeps the breed alive because they're also breeding so many, and then we have a huge amount of ponies then to trade, which is great. And then I suppose the next thing is kind of the sales option and the kind of the market demand. So we're really, really lucky that we have Clifton Connemara pony sales just being one. Now it is the biggest Connemara pony sales that we have. And they run, I think, probably about 8 or 9 sales per year. In October, I know it can be a 5-day sale. And I think if the demand is there, that can be upped. So you do get a huge amount of foreign investors coming in to buy ponies, which is fantastic. It's fantastic for it's a sale kind of unparalleled really for one particular breed to be able to run the sale that many times a year and to have the buyers there, and they have a huge clearance rate. So I suppose that gives breeders a little bit of confidence then to be able to say, okay, even if I don't breed exactly what I want, it will be what somebody else wants, and here's my option to kind of to move that pony on to hopefully a home where it'll be needed and used in the right way. So that's really good, and that kind of keeps that kind of market demand really strong for us, or certainly has done over the last few years. On the downside of that, I suppose, as we know with any kind of sales or market, is that it can kind of dictate then the wider market and the open market. So if you have a particularly poor sales for one reason or another, so for example, at the moment, if obviously hay prices, for example, are quite high in the UK at the moment. So there may not be as many UK buyers coming to this sale in February, but that then might impact because the prices of the sales may not be so strong, which for the open market then might just kind of follow suit on that. But I think, as we all know, depending on your pony, you'll always get the price for the really good ponies, and ponies who've been, schooled correctly or bred correctly or have that breeding in them. And that's just to talk a little bit, obviously, what we're talking about there, all the different kind of sales opportunities that we have. So Clifton Pony, Connemara Pony Sales being one, but obviously we have lots of different pony sales here. Like we have weekly ones here in Galway, as well as obviously online sales, Facebook sales being probably the most way that people get their ponies out there at the moment. And then I suppose I'm again just watching the time, so I'm really skipping through and I'm at the end here now. But yeah, I hope that kind of gives you a bit of an insight into just what it is like to breed here in Ireland. And I suppose the last thing I kind of wanted to say on that in terms of breeding in Ireland would be just the practicalities of it. So like what happens, I know again in the UK you guys do a lot of chilled semen and even frozen semen. Of course, we do that here as well, and it's huge in the sport horse industry. For Connemara ponies, yes, of course, there is chilled semen options available, but some of the biggest studs, ourselves maybe being one of them, and some of the other big studs, the really well-known studs, the stallions that sire quite a large number of foals each year, we don't do collection, so we do natural covering only. And what that means is when people do realize that their mare is in season or they've had her scanned and she needs to be covered, it's actually quite informal. People just call up and they'll say, I need to get the mare covered. Are you going to be there this evening? I need to use any one of the stallions. And we'll say, yeah, that's it. Call to the house. They come, they're covered, the mare is covered, and they leave again. And I suppose the whole process is over and done in a couple of minutes, and they're gone from the yard again. When I know that's quite different in the UK, where a lot of the time the mare will be dropped to the stud, she'll stay at the stud, and she'll actually stay there until she's scanned in a lot of cases. Certainly we don't just have the scale to be able to do that. We don't have the space to be able to keep mares for that kind of length of time. And also, I suppose more and more now people are scanning their mares before they come to us, before they come to be covered, which is fantastic because it cuts down on costs for everybody, travel costs, travel time for everybody. So they'll know that, okay, my mare, there's no point in covering her today. She's not going to be properly in season, until 2 days' time. So let's just do it then. And usually it's one cover. So we're seeing so much more of that happening at the moment. So yeah, in practical terms, that's pretty much how it works here. For the majority of Connemara pony studs would be you get a phone call and it could be I'm outside your gate. Any chance we could get the mare covered? Or it could be, I'm going to be there tomorrow. Now, obviously, there's a whole load of people who, make their plans way in advance, and that's fantastic. There's also quite a few people who come to the yard here, and because we have so many, they'll just take the mare off the box and say, which stallion do you think we should give her? They'll trust dad's judgment or even sometimes my own. And they, they do ask for the input or whatever. So that's great to see as well, because I suppose we know these stallions, we know the traits that they're passing on, and when we look at the mare and we say, okay, she needs more height, or she needs more depth, she needs more bone, different things like that. We know which stallions hopefully would suit and make a proper match. And then very finally, I suppose our own kind of breeding goals. You'll have noticed at the very start when I spoke about the stallions, and like their genetics come into it so much. And obviously, I think all of our breeding goals are to breed the perfect model of a pony. And to breed that Hoyes winner, and to breed that, pony who's going to make a kid's life, complete, because they have this perfect pony with the perfect temperament, and all of these different things that we think about. But I suppose for us as a stud, one of the things that is certainly top of our list all of the time is kind of the conservation of the breed, and the conservation of kind of different bloodlines. So you'll have seen through the list of stallions that we have like four, if not five, kind of that have either come directly from other countries or have been bred by stallions who have come from other countries. And that is to kind of open up the gene pool again. Now, we don't just take a stallion from another country just because it's different. It also has to meet all of our criteria in terms of conformation, movement, bone, depth, temperament, all of these things. But we do look outside of the normal pool of ponies that we have here. So for many people, there's some stallions out there at the moment who are prolific breeders. I mean, you can't look at any catalog without seeing the names so many times, and that's fantastic. And the reason for that is that those stallions are breeding particularly good ponies. But for us, we would kind of call those offspring kind of end products almost. Because where do you go next? Because yes, you might have your beautiful pony and it might be, achieving everything that you want. But in terms of genetics, it is totally closed down. It's probably related to, 50% of what's out there. So for us, we're thinking, yes, okay, that's of course a beautiful pony and we can't deny that. But we really want that beautiful pony with this other genetic component where it's completely outcrossed. That's the goal. So that's why we kind of do a lot of this international kind of trading with ponies, and thankfully we've been pretty lucky. Sometimes it doesn't work. We brought a pony in from Finland a few years ago, and he was a beautiful pony himself. And he was completely outcrossed bloodlines, but unfortunately he just didn't cross well with the mares that he was given. Now he did get quite a few opportunities, but it just didn't come off in the way that we wanted. The ponies were all, lovely, but there was none of them that were ever going to go on and kind of reach the highest level. And even when we've used those to breed back in with the other ponies, again, to keep the kind of genetic component alive. So it doesn't always work. It does sometimes, and we're quite hopeful about Scare Garden's date night. His first crop of foals in Ireland will be on the ground this year. Again, we kept that just being slightly selective so that we could kind of really track the foals, see what he's going to produce. So yeah, that's kind of our main breeding goal. Is obviously we want, like everybody else, we want the perfect pony with the perfect temperament. But also we really, really concentrate on that kind of genetic component. So I suppose then just to wrap it up and say if anybody has any kind of insights that they wanted to share, or as I said, that's all kind of in my own experience and my own views. So if anyone wants to contradict me, feel free. Or if anybody has any questions about like what we do, or how we do things typically here, feel free to shout.
How many mares, Joe, would you cover in a covering season?
So last year I know it was more than about 160 mares that came through the yard, but they were all Connemara mares. That sounds obviously like a lot, but we are
Yeah.
dividing that out between quite a few stallions.
Mhm.
Manor Duke, Manor Marble, Fletcher Moss, all extremely popular. So they would probably get the bulk of the mares. Moore is a carrier for HWSD, so we limit the
Mhm.
mares that he can get. He can only get mares who have proof that they are tested NN, so
Mhm.
that that gene can't be passed on. as is Airmore Golden Marble, but he's not open to public stud. He's just for our own use. So yeah, outside of that kind of 160-ish, we then have like all of your sport horse mares that would use Fletcher Moss and Kirkmore quite a lot. And then a lot of your show pony mares, hunter pony mares, they would use Banks Timber quite a lot. So yeah, there's quite a lot of covering, quite a lot of action going on in the yard here come springtime.
Yeah. Thank you.
That's it. Thanks very much.
If anyone has questions and they're not happy to sort of ask them out loud, then put questions in the chat, and we'll also have an open Q&A at the end of the meeting as well. So, you know, feel free to ask questions. Thank you, Joe. Now, I don't know if Sarah from Stallion AI is here. I've been looking for her.
Oh, we are here. I don't know if you can see us.
Perfect. That's brilliant. I couldn't see you. So if you do a request for sharing the screen, it should let you, I should be able to click on that.
Okay, perfect. Is that
There you
good?
go.
Is it working?
I can certainly see you, so hopefully everybody else can as well.
Okay, good start. Perfect. Oh, well, that's great. That was so interesting, Joe. We really enjoyed listening to that. Thank you, everyone, to the National Pony Society for inviting us tonight. People who don't know me, I'm Sarah Wilkes. I handle the sales in the office. I deal with the show jumping stallions and the showing stallions, and also handle like the stallion accounts and do the marketing. So it's a really busy, varied role that I do, which is great, and it's great fun. No 2 days are the same. And next to me here is Lydia. And Lydia, I'll let you introduce yourself.
So I'm a lab technician here at Stallion AI Services. I started off here as a student when I was at Harper Adams University. I've since come back and I work part-time for Stallion AI in the lab here, and also with Lucy and Gemini Genetics as well, who we'll introduce you to a little bit later.
Yeah, so the plan, we thought, I know we were very lucky to join you on a webinar last year, so we thought we'd mix it up a little bit this time and show you the general thing about what we do here in the lab, and talk about the semen collection and the freezing and our distribution. And then we're going to head off and delve into some genetic preservation, which is really interesting and exciting for you all. So I'll just start off and I'll just let you know about Stallion AI Services. We are probably one of the largest breeding centres here in the UK, and we collect and freeze globally about 200 stallions a year. We've got storage centres across about 35 different countries. We import and export. Our service for that is actually really massive now. It really grows each year, and this coming year we're going to be representing about 300 stallions worldwide. And we're very lucky with that. It's not just sport horses. There's a lot of rare breeds and native ponies that are built in with that as well. So we thank anybody. We've got a couple of Cashel stallions actually on the books in the tank. So it's really interesting, Joe, that we can carry on the story for you and preserve genetics from your horses. So I think we'll start off and just let you have a little look around the lab. So we're just going to move the camera around and go and show you some things. So just bear with us a second. How can we do that? Can we? You want to flip the camera around, don't we?
At the moment, the main bit we're seeing on the screen is sort of a thing that says you are sharing screen. So I don't know if we can make you larger onto the...
How does that work?
Disappeared again. Oh,
There we go.
can I make you the main...
Yes, if you can you spotlight us?
That's good.
There we go.
Yes,
Yeah. Now we just want to flip the screen around.
Yep.
And we're good to go. There we go. That's absolutely brilliant. So let's go and have a look now in our lab.
So I'll start off with how we process the semen, because that's the main thing that we do here. So we have our collection area, which is right outside our laboratory. So us in the lab, we can see the stallions collect, we can see how many jumps it takes them, because that can really affect quality, if they're stressed, how well they tease, what the libido's like. So that's really good information for us to have before we even see the semen. Then the semen comes directly into us, so it has no travel time at all to get into the lab. And then what we'll do is it gets collected into a bottle, just like this. We would want to weigh it first, so we can see how much the stallion's giving. So we put it on balance, just like that. We'd also assess the semen just by eye, so we want to make sure that it's a good colour, that it's normal. Sometimes stallions can urinate if they've been out in the field. And they've come in and maybe not had a wee before they've collected, so they can urinate into the sample, which is obviously going to affect quality. So we want to make sure that that's not happened. They might have to be recollected later in the day. And then we also want to make sure that there's no blood in the sample or anything that's just generally abnormal. So while here's some we prepared earlier. Monty's our little teaser stallion. He's absolutely brilliant. He provides really good quality semen for us to show you. But essentially what we would do is we want to see what it looks like under the microscope. So we just pipettes just a little there. Get it under the screen. This has been in the fridge.
A bit closer.
Yeah.
There we go, yeah.
And then I'll just put a cover slip on. Like so.
And the moment of truth.
Moment of truth. So there he is. So that's brilliant. So yeah, Monty is our Welsh A stallion. He's just a teaser for our teaser mares that we have on site. So he keeps them in season all through the summer. So the teaser mares then in turn tease the stallions that are on centre ready for collections. But his semen is absolutely brilliant. So we'll assess it by eye for motility. Just to make sure it's alive and moving. So motility is assessed two kind of different ways. So we're looking at total motility, so that's how much in total of the cells are moving, which as you can see for Monty is rather a lot of them. Then also what we want to look at is progressive motility. So that's the number of cells that are moving in a straight line. They aren't kind of curly, chasing their tails because they're not going to get anywhere. So the progressive motility is the most important kind of value that we're looking at there. So
yeah, I was going to say,
yes.
what kind of score just would you give Monty?
Oh, Monty's brilliant. So he'd be kind of 70% straight off the bat for total, and then we usually kind of go 10. It's usually 5 to 10% lower for progressive. So he'd maybe be 60, 65, but yeah, he's always on the better end. We are quite harsh when we score the semen here, so we wouldn't just so then when we send the semen out, if it's degraded in quality slightly over time, if it's been sent out kind of chilled overnight, we want it to still look really, really good for mare owners. So we want to just kind of err on the side of caution when we score semen here. But what we would do then is process the semen for either fresh, chilled or frozen. So what that means is for fresh semen, it's kind of as good as natural, really. It's the next best thing when it comes to AI. So there would be a mare at Twemlow's, which is next door, Twemlow Stud Farm. They'd have the mare in the stocks, ready to go, washed off, and we'd assess the semen, make sure it looked good, and we'd get the appropriate amount that would be needed in a syringe. And when I say we run, we run next door, and we make sure that it's going to get in the mare. We'd obviously label and date the syringe so that they knew exactly what stallion was in there when it was collected, and also the score that we gave it, so then they can do a quick check under the microscope there as well, so that they know that it's the right semen. We also do chilled, which is mostly what we do in the breeding season, which is kind of between the April to August time. So this will be where we're sending out semen overnight to mares across the country. So essentially what we do for this is we add a milk-based extender. There are quite a few on the market at the minute. So at the start of the season, we would recommend that stallions that stand with us have extender tests. So we have about 5 different extenders that we use at the minute. And each stallion will be tested over a series of 48 hours. And at different time points, we would look at the semen under the microscope and check which one his semen likes. This can change year on year, so just because a stallion liked one type of extender one year doesn't mean he liked the same one the year after. I think Big Star's been in quite a few different extenders, for example. He's here with us all the time. It's just what they prefer as they maybe age or their situation changes in their management, whatever. But we can adapt to suit them. We also would do freezing, which is what we're doing this time of year. So we have a lot of stallions that will come in this time of year for either younger stallions to kind of get their stocks up with us to keep their frozen straws in the tanks, which I'll show you in a minute. Or stallions who will have a really busy competition season. It's good for them to be able to have frozen semen available. So if they're away kind of all over the world traveling for competitions, they can just have their frozen semen sent out instead. They don't have to have the stud duty pressures as well. So what we would do instead with this is we mix it with a different extender. Tullis likes to call this is liquid gold. We've done a load of research and we actually produced this extender in-house ourselves. So this is freezing extender. It contains a cryoprotectant. And essentially what a cryoprotectant does is it dehydrates the cell. So that means that we kind of use the analogy of if you put a glass bottle of water in the freezer, if you left it in there, the glass would shatter. So essentially the cryoprotectant stops that happening, takes all the liquid out, so there's no pressure build up, so it keeps that cell membrane nicely intact. So then when we thaw out the semen, it just means that the cells are intact, ready to go.
Perfect.
Yes. What we do is we would put it into half mil straw. Again, here's some I made earlier. So what this would have is Monty's name on. We usually can you get close enough? Yeah, that's it. There we go. Yeah. Usually this would also have the Stallion's microchip number on as well, but given Monty's just one of our boys, he doesn't have that. Also has our name, Stallion AI services, and the date as well, and the concentration that we have frozen at. So all the useful information. So different stallions will have different straw colours, and if they freeze year on year with us, we try and keep that the same, just so then it's easily recognisable who's who. So I'll take you through to our storage tank areas. So due to the different health testing requirements, we have two different rooms here. So we've got our UK freezing room, and we've also got our export room. So any stallions that have been on our centre freezing for UK distribution only are in those tanks. And for export stallions, they're in those. So I've got one tank open and a toilet. Alex has made a cameo.
All right, how you doing? All right.
Very good.
Brilliant. Sorry, interrupting you.
Yeah.
Perfect flow. I can't resist. Oh, I'll give you a bit of support.
Go on then.
No, you carry on. Go on. I can watch behind the
We've got
scenes.
viewers in Germany as well, in Sweden
Yeah.
tonight, and
All over the place.
lovely. Yeah, go on, Lizzie.
So I don't know if you want to get a bit closer, Sarah, so you can have a look in the tank as well. Maybe don't drop your phone in there. But here's where all the straws are stored. So you can see they're in droppers.
I'm going to move back and just show you the size of the tank.
Yeah, so we've got 4 of these super tanks. So each one of these tanks has capacity for 250,000 straws. So we actually have capacity for 1 million straws on centre here, and we're fast filling up. So Tullis, we need to build an extension. But yeah, we have plenty straws in here and growing. So what I'll do now is I'll show you into our export room. And to our dry shippers. So essentially what my job is in the summer, I kind of take charge of these 120, we have more than this, a whole container's worth of these dry shippers. So these contain liquid nitrogen vapour, and we send out to mares all over the country. So I have vets and studs in Scotland, Wales, all over the place. And I'll just show you actually what the inside of one looks like. So I've got one charged here. So we get the straws out, the correct stallion, and then they would just be dropped into a goblet which goes in there, and that just fits in the liquid nitrogen. Now these shippers have a lifespan of about 7 to 10 days with the liquid nitrogen in, and we usually send semen out on a kind of 1 to 3 day standard delivery service. So that's plenty of time to get semen to you guys on time. We just like to know when your mare's been scanned, when she's going to be ready, stallion that you want, and how many doses. We have a really good ordering system through our website, which Sarah does a lot of work on. And yeah, the order comes through to me. I pack and ship it. That's how we go.
Yeah, and the good thing about frozen is if you pick your stallion and it's frozen, get it to the vets ready.
Yes,
because then the panic's gone, isn't it?
If you choose a vet where they have frozen semen storage, if you have liquid nitrogen tanks such as these, we can get the straws to you ahead of time, so your vet already has it. And then when your mare's ready, you already have that semen. So if she's kind of playing a bit silly with her timings, you know, you've always got it there for when she is ready. The other thing I will say is that frozen semen storage is so useful for stallions. Again, like I said, you're competing, younger stallions, but also it's a good peace of mind to have the stallion's genetics in frozen storage. So should he have an accident, if he's doing natural cover, or just an accident in the field and he can't cover again or can't collect again, then you have that storage already. You've got the genetics, so they kind of outlive the lifespan of the stallion, which I think is, invaluable, really.
Absolutely.
But on that note, should we go and see Lucy?
Should we go and find Lucy?
Yes.
Yeah, let's walk through. And while we're just walking through for you, let me tell you that we do offer a special, we call it our conservation package, and we aim it at native breeds. And we do a special price of just over £1,000 for 15 doses, and we help you with some marketing as well for that. So anybody who's interested, if they want to let Kerry or anybody know, and we can come back to you and give you some more information on that. Okay, so this is taking it to the next level.
Yes.
So it's really exciting, isn't it?
So I'll let you into the lab here and introduce you to Lucy at Gemini Genetics.
Hello. Hi there. Yes, my name's Lucy and I run Gemini Genetics. I actually used to work at Stallion AI services when I was a bit younger. But now I work and full-time manage Gemini Genetics. So we are a pet and equine genetic preservation company for cloning. So we work with skin samples in this laboratory here to create life using skin samples. So I actually have a little setup over there, Sarah. If you
let's go and have a look.
Of a skin sample that I've taken advantage of having a few extra hours in the day today to preserve one this evening. So
we're behind a screen, aren't we? So we've just got to be.
So if you've got a bit of a glare, that's because we're behind a visor here, because they're processed under a biological safety cabinet. But basically, we receive skin samples from animals, and we work to preserve them. So what we've done here is wash them through different sterilisation stages, and then we have barcoded cryovials at the back there where we preserve them. And the reason why we're doing this work is because skin samples contain cells that we can then culture. So I've got on the microscope here. So it's different to Lydia's microscope where the semen was moving. These are skin cells. They are living, but they don't move around. And these contain the whole genetic profile of an animal. And basically these can be inserted into an egg, and that's how you then create a clone from them. As well as doing cloning from a cat and dog perspective, we also work as well for conservation purposes and rare breeds. So there's obviously the UK native equine breeds, and there's also a number of native dog breeds in the UK. And again, across both those groups, we have certain groups and societies that are submitting skin samples, because these could be really valuable for conservation of those breeds, because these skin cells here, as I say, they contain the whole genetic profile of that animal. And you can collect skin as well from females. Obviously semen collection, it's just from entire males. So you can collect from females, also from geldings too.
This initial process isn't all that expensive, is it, Lucy?
No. Just to preserve skin, so you've got two choices. You've got a stage that we just call genetic preservation, where basically we are preserving these skin samples there that you see there. And that's just £600 plus VAT to do that stage. The cell culture is a little bit more expensive, £1,600 plus that to do that. And then we preserve the material, and it's in storage at £12 per month. And when we culture them, so these are the little dishes that they grow in, and I have incubators behind us. So this is where the cells grow. So we have a horse in culture at the minute, and actually we have a cat and a dog as well. And we also have a donkey as well.
And how long does it take to do the cultures, Lucy?
So the cultures on average take 7 to 10 days to complete. Some of them take longer, but 7 to 10 days is what we aim for. And they grow in these little flasks like this, and we can't show you in the incubators because I have to keep it sterile in there, but basically it's like a little shelving system with the little flasks where the cells are growing. And I just, if anybody was interested, I just pulled up this diagram that I often use to explain from like a conservation perspective why the application of skin cell banking. It is to be used along other reproductive techniques such as semen freezing and embryo freezing. But basically this diagram here is demonstrating if we have a population and it goes through a narrowing for whatever reason that might be, if we've had the foresight to bank the genetics that were available to us when the population was wider, we can then use the skin sample preservation and ultimately genetically replicating those animals to restore the genetic diversity far quicker than other available reproductive tools. But also with our lab as well, because we do wear other conservation hats as well, we'll be working towards a future where we can potentially generate some from skin samples too, so then you're not just limited to bringing the same genetic sets back. And that is about as much as I can show you in the lab, but we have got Tullis has left Jem with us, who is our clone dog. So
yeah, shall we go and grab her quickly?
We can go and say hello to Jem.
Jem!
Nice.
We're just going to introduce Jem to Tullis quickly before Q&A.
Jem, come here. This is Jem. One of those of you can tell us about this amazing dog. What a marvellous dog it is.
We'll have to go now.
Yeah, and do spins.
So yeah, this is Jem. So she likes having a scratch. So she started her life very much as one of those in the same state essentially as those skin samples that you saw before. And so yeah, she's a clone and she's Tullis's dog. And we also have a horse called Merkish Jem on the yard, who's also a clone. So we've got 2 gems. And she very much enjoys having a good old scratch, don't you, Jem? But yeah, so she would have started as a small skin sample from the ear of her original dog, and then we cultured the cells like you saw on the microscope screen there. And then the sample is sent to our partner company in America, where the cloning is done, so where the embryos are generated. And then this is Jem, come back to us. So yeah.
Oh. Yeah. Thank you, Lucy.
Yeah. So she's going to go home now, that's it.
Oh, lovely. Well, do you want to film us a minute then?
Yeah.
So thank you very much, everybody, for listening.
Thank you.
There's so much more that we could tell you. We do have our Stallion show that's on the 18th of April if anybody wants to come and have a look around and learn a bit more about what we do. But please send any questions in and we'll be very, very happy to help and answer them, whatever they may be. Thank you very much for having us tonight.
Thank you very much. It's fascinating what you're doing there. It really is on so many levels. So thank you.
Right, it's a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Don't end it.
Has anybody got any questions?
I did see one in the chat. Let me just find it. So where was it?
I think I saw it come. I think it said something about do we have any Connemaras?
Got any Connemara semen, and do you ship to Denmark was the question.
Oh, we do ship to Denmark and we do import from Denmark, Denmark as well. We do both. And so yeah, that is possible.
And then the other question was, does the animal have to be of a certain age to be a skin clone? Oh, I think you've just popped yourself on mute.
There you go.
There we go. Yeah.
Thanks for your question. No is the answer to that. So that's another application of it, because obviously when you're collecting reproductive samples, there will become an age where the quality of those samples isn't quite so good. That's again when you can use skin sample preservation, and also it can be from a younger animal prior to them being sexually mature as well.
Yep, that's fine. And then somebody has asked, is the £1,000 deal available for British riding ponies?
Yes, it is. We do that too. So if they want to either drop us a message or you guys a message, and we'll send the information across to them. Yeah.
Perfect, thank you. And then finally, somebody has said, how does it work? And that's probably quite a big topic. So so maybe, if we do this again next year, maybe we can go into more detail about the actual process and how you grow from the cells to the full-grown dog that we've just seen.
Ah, right, okay, yes, we can do that, can't we?
I saw one just come, somebody just asked how much as well.
Yeah, we also have got videos on our YouTube channel where we created animations to explain the process, but really briefly, if we've got time, basically you saw the cells on the screen before, and the basic process is a donor egg cell is taken and its nucleus is removed. And in replacement, one of the cells that you've seen on the screen in the lab is inserted there, and it's fused together with an electrical impulse, and then it's transferred to the surrogate. So it's rather like ICSI, if you're more familiar with that, so intracytoplasmic sperm injection, where they inject the sperm into the egg to fertilise the egg. But the difference being that there isn't any sperm in this process. Instead, we insert a skin cell, and because it contains the whole genetic set, you don't need sperm. So then it's over to the surrogate mum, so it's similar then like embryo transfer in horses then. And that's the process really. So it's really not actually that complicated at all really. But yeah, if you're interested, we can do more on it next time, but also we've got a few animations on our YouTube channel as well.
Perfect. We will point people in that direction. And Julia's asked about a list of stallions available. And I know that on the Stallion AI website, there's a list of all the stallions that you've got available, both frozen and will be standing with you this season.
Yeah, there is. I think we're getting close to about 1,000 stallions on there at the moment. So there is a filter, so you can filter down to breed. You can choose your own stud as well. So there's loads of options. But if you need any help or advice, just pick up the phone to us, and we've got a great team in the office who can help you.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. We will after we've just got the presentation from Tom Blunt now. But if either of you guys are going to stay on the call, we will open up after Tom for more general Q&A. So there might be some more questions that people will think of that they might want to fire your way if you guys are going to still be available.
Yeah, we will be. Thank you very much. I'll see you in a minute.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, now I need to work out how to unspotlight you. Oh, there we go, up there. Perfect. So that was absolutely brilliant, and I know Tom is on the call. And then you might need to request to share your screen, Tom, or I might be able to allow you to do that. Let's have a look. Right, that should let you share now, Tom, I hope.
We'll try. Yes. Hopefully everyone can hear me all right.
We can see you and hear you, Tom.
Great. Let's see if that...
Yep, perfect. That's working.
Can you see that all right?
Yep, thank you, Tom.
No, perfect. So yeah, good evening, everyone. So I'm Tom Blunt from the Rare Breed Survival Trust. So I'm the senior conservation advisor there. Yeah, thank you for the invitation to talk today. I sort of asked what I was sort of given a brief, and one of the questions there was what actions should breed societies and breeders be taking to ensure that the gene pool doesn't get any narrower? And I appreciate that's probably a conversation we could have for much more than half an hour, but I'll try and sort of plant a few seeds and ideas, and I'm sure what I talk about won't be new ideas to the majority of you. But yeah, it'll be interesting to cover, and obviously we'll take some questions at the end as well. So in terms of the Rare Breed Survival Trust, appreciate some of you might know a bit about us. Essentially, we're a charity set up in 1973, ultimately for the conservation of our rare and native livestock and equine breeds. So obviously today we're talking about the equine breeds, but I also have cattle, sheep, pigs, goats, and poultry breeds as well. And obviously that's interesting in its own right in terms of how each of those species look at sort of conservation, and the sort of makeup of those industries is very different. And there's certainly learnings from each industry that I think everyone can sort of take, and we've sort of seen that as well when it comes to sort of some technology that's being used. Certainly starts with some species and then goes down into some others. So ultimately, the charity itself, the first part was to, like I said, ensure the preservation of breeds and breeding groups of domestic livestock and the genes within them. And the next part was to sort of conduct and carry out research on the breeds, promote their uses, and ultimately help to their sort of conservation. So unfortunately, before the charity was established, some breeds did become extinct. But fortunately, we've seen breeds sort of thrive and haven't actually lost any breeds since. I'm not saying it's been all smooth sailing, and there's still lots of work to do with a number of breeds across all the species. But there certainly has been significant progress. Within this, we have sort of 4 elements of work. So that's the routes to market. Like I said, trying to showcase what breeds can do. Obviously, trying to look at whether there's government support for these breeds as well. So lobby with the devolved nations. So we worked across the UK to try and ensure that there's support for native breeds. And then we have the sort of project element of it, where we have the overarching projects. So I'll talk a bit about this later on, but the most obvious one we do is our gene bank. So we've got the RBST gene bank. We work with Tullis and Stallion AI and the team there on the equine side, along with a few others, as well as the other species as well. And I'll talk about that. But then we have more breed specific projects. So that's where we identify a need within a breed, and then work with them, the breeders, the breed societies, on a particular trait. So that could be a gene banking project, it could be a promotion project, it could be a specific element that they want to showcase, and we identify with them. So yeah, it just depends on the circumstances. So how do we do that, and how do we prioritize what we do? So we have our watch list, which is gathered every year. So this data is gathered from breed societies. So obviously we're covering the UK native breeds. So within this data, I'll talk about exactly what we take. But the way the watch list is derived is looking at it changed about 4 years ago in terms of the methodology of how we used to do this. So we used to just focus purely on the estimated sort of female breeding population. And that's how it had been monitored for sort of since the start of the charity. But we recognised that by focusing purely on just the female side, that was quite a naive way of sort of looking at the conservation of the breed. It's not sort of looking at the genetic health of the breeds, basing it purely on the numbers. Having 1,000 animals that might be sort of closely related or highly inbred with not much genetic diversity is probably worse than having 100 animals that are very unrelated and the breed's in a much stronger position. So that's where we started to look at the sort of inbreeding within the breeds and looked at something called effective population size. So basically, it's an indication of the genetic diversity within the breed. So it looks at the methodology we use, looks at the number of males and females, and then basically a higher the figure, the better. So a low effective population size signifies a greater likelihood of inbreeding and a higher risk of loss of genetic diversity. So this is just an example of the data. I've just pulled a few breeds up. So we've got data going back to about 2000 for these breeds. So within that, we collect the female registrations for that year, the male registrations. So we're only looking at we're not looking at the global populations for this. We're just looking for the UK population. So obviously the sires that are producing those animals and the mares that are producing those animals. And this is where we're looking at the change between years, and ultimately we're looking for the trends, if things have declined, whether they're increasing, decreasing, etc. So if we look at the example, if we look at the Dartmoors, for example, so we can see they're a breed that has sort of been in recent years, their percentages have improved, so they've actually increased the number of mares, but also the number of size has slightly increased. So what you'd want to ensure is that the distance between the percentage change in the sires and the mares perhaps doesn't change too much, because ultimately for the effective population size, we want more males to be used. The methodology we use for calculating effective population size, there's a number of different methodologies that can be used, but this one focuses purely on the sires and dams. One of the reasons for this, if you can imagine, we're collecting data from all the breeds and all the species. This sort of stud book data is the simplest to get. You can do more detailed effective population size calculations. So any of you that have listened to presentations from Dr. Andy Dell, he'll talk about running what's called like a pop rep and looking at effective population size on the rate of inbreeding, which gives you a much more sort of accurate measure. But for us, if you think of all the breeds we deal with, that requires getting entire stud book records for every single breed and then running that through the computer programs. That's going back for the computerized records from when it began. So that's obviously quite challenging. So we use the stud book data to collect the effective population size, and this gives us an idea of what that means. So obviously, I talked about the higher the figure, the better. So this is the effective population size for recent years. I grabbed some breeds and put them on there. Basically, the FAO set a threshold for 50. Anything below 50 is basically the minimum threshold of what a breed should have for effective population size. So obviously you'll see there's some breeds like the Hackneys, for example, are very close to that mark. So they're what we call a priority breed, because they're really sort of a concern in terms of their effective population size. And then obviously it says anything over 500 is what sort of needed to sort of not have the breed secure, but to look at the long-term survival within the breed. Sure, I'll touch on this a bit later on as well. So yeah, obviously there are two elements, or the data, like I said, is what determines how we categorize the breeds, but also what we look at and what's particularly important when we look at the conservation of a breed is the geographic dispersion of a breed. So this is actually a map for the Dartmoor breed, and as you'd expect, there you can see quite a high concentration in the southwest. So basically the larger the dots, the the larger the herds, and the more animals in that area. And obviously, from a conservation perspective, that's can be quite concerning if a breed is geographically concentrated like this. Obviously, the obvious one is disease risk and what that poses. Obviously, if there was anything to start in the southwest, then the breed could be quite vulnerable. Obviously, we see this with some other breeds from other species in terms of where they're located. Some sheep breeds, like the Norfolk Horn, are predominantly on the east coast in East Anglia. So obviously the likes of when blue tongue and things come over there, quite sort of vulnerable from that position. We also have some breeds that are quite highly concentrated around bovine TB areas. So Gloucester cattle, for example, the majority of the breed is based around the sort of Three Counties, Gloucestershire area. So obviously that's quite a concern from a sort of breed security perspective. So that's when we look at measures of what we can do to try and sort of mitigate the risk. So the gene banking is one element, collecting semen, but also as well, obviously ensuring that the genetics are sort of perhaps geographically spread across the country and not sort of condensed in one area. We've seen examples of this on a big scale. So you go back to 2001 when obviously we had the foot and mouth. There was huge concerns with the Herdwick sheep that we were going to lose those in Cumbria. So subsequently, since then, they sort of set up, I suppose, sort of contingency flocks in different areas. So basically, they just took genetics and animals of based in Cumbria and just established flocks in different regions that were sort of their security hub. If anything did happen, they wanted to ensure that they could prepare for that. Obviously, trying to have a range of genetics preserved. So the geographic concentration and how sort of geographically dispersed a breed is sort of critical to the conservation and the genetics. And also as well, the geographic dispersion of a breed can have a huge consequence when it comes to the breeding element of a breed as well. Obviously, there can often be barriers when it comes to breeding, and we might get sort of concentrated use of a stallion purely because that happens to be the stallion that is accessible for them. So it's important to ensure that that's sort of covered and there are ideas, and that's where obviously the likes of AI perhaps does open that up for other breeders to be able to access genetics that are most suitable for their mares, rather than the one that happens to be the most convenient one to them in terms of location. So in terms of conservation breeding strategies, in an ideal world, what would we do? So we'd have an unlimited population in terms of we would have a huge selection of animals to choose from. There'd be complete random mating. Obviously, we'd want equal contributions, so we wouldn't want a stallion contributing more than another. So they'd all be having the same number, and we wouldn't want generations to overlap within the pedigree. But in reality, that doesn't happen. Obviously, we have restricted sort of closed populations. There's unequal sex ratios, so obviously more females to males. Obviously, the family sizes can vary, and ultimately we come into that as well. We don't have random mating. We have our selection processes of what we're choosing, what we're going to breed. So from a conservation breeding strategy, the sort of real populations and the ideal situation from a conservation perspective are very different. So the importance of ensuring we manage and have a strategic breeding strategy is critical, really. I'm sure you've all seen these sort of images before in terms of what happens if it's not managed properly. But we think about a small population and we have what we call the extinction vortex. And it's really easy to understand that could occur. So small population, inbreeding, random genetic drift, losing the genetic viability, and then the cycle just continues and the population gets smaller and smaller, obviously losing diversity within a breed, more deleterious traits sort of being prevalent within a breed. An example on the right-hand side there is just a way of demonstrating how sort of random selection, if we don't strategically think about how we're preserving these genetics, how we can quite simply just lose genetics and lose alleles without really thinking about it. So we could start off with a high number, just keep random mating over years, not concentrating on the genetics, and then ultimately at the end of the process, we've completely narrowed that gene pool. So it's important to think about how we're going to preserve this. So when we come to, obviously we talked about the challenges in terms of small populations losing genetic diversity more than larger populations. So when we're looking at our priority lists and we're collecting that data from breed societies, obviously the smaller breeds are the ones that are perhaps most vulnerable and are most at risk, and the larger populations are the ones that they still obviously need to look at it and manage, but with the numbers, if they're managing it correctly, then their genetic diversity in turn should be more diverse within that population. So when we come to look at it, we can look at breeding strategies that look at inbreeding. I'll talk a bit about this, looking at like mean kinship, things like that. But ultimately, what we want to be looking at when we're looking at conservation breeding is thinking about the basics in terms of the temperament and the conformation. Obviously, although we're looking at perhaps rare bloodlines and rare genetics, we still want to ensure that they conform to the breed standards and things. Obviously, we want to try and look at how we can preserve the genetics, but we want to ensure that they are the correct standard and are meeting the sort of breed criteria as well. And ultimately, once we've got to that, we want to be trying to use as many males as possible. Obviously, looking to not keep too many offspring from one male, and then looking to how we can minimize inbreeding and sort of mean kinship. Obviously, I appreciate there's always that balance when it comes to breeding, looking at sort of the phenotype and the genotype. So and that obviously can be a challenge when we're looking at pedigree breeds. I see it across all species and all breeds when you come to the showing markets and different things, and people sort of looking at those bloodlines and the popular stallions, successful progeny of an animal and things. So I appreciate how that can be challenging when it comes to the conservation breeding, and I'm here saying to use as many males as possible, not overusing one male and things. And then ultimately, if we have a good animal, we want to pass those genetics on to the next generation. So there is obviously a balance to be had when it comes to the sort of conservation breeding side of things. So we talk about the conservation of animal genetic resources. So what can we look at? So obviously we've got what we call in situ and ex situ conservation. So in situ is the actual animals on the ground, the breeding program. Ex situ is when we're talking about essentially like gene banking. So whether that's looking at embryos, semen, collection of tissue cells, etc., as we've heard about already this evening. And I think for any conservation breeding to occur and any breeding program, and when we're looking at preserving genetics of a breed, I think it's important to consider both elements and have both in situ and ex situ conservation sort of complementing each other when we're looking at the preservation of a breed. I think it's important to look at that. So obviously gene banking, obviously Tullis and his team there. Historically, the RBST gene bank was set up as in sort of worst case scenario. So breeds, if they became extinct, they could be recreated with the semen that was collected. Now they're seen in a much more conservation based in terms of the use that they can have for a breed. So the collection of the semen, and then ultimately people looking to use those genetics in their breeding program. So we have some semen stored. Some breeders do access some of the semen we have. Not too much in the equine side of things. There were some Cleveland Bays, a Cleveland Bay born last year from our gene bank. Obviously, with the other species, we do that more regularly, cattle in particular. So just to put it into context, we've had calves born from semen that was collected in the sort of 1950s successfully, and that sort of those genetic lines were sort of being lost, and it's great that they're being able to be used again. Predominantly, it's semen we collect. We do have embryos for some of the species as well. It's something we're looking to continue to grow and work with the breed societies on this. But so yeah, the gene banking is an important element, obviously, both for the current breeding, but also the future generations. Obviously, stallions and things might go in and out of fashion, and genetics and bloodlines we think perhaps aren't as relevant now. We might look to in the future. We're seeing it in some of the cattle breeding as the change in how people breed cattle and how they manage cattle, so more extensive outdoor based systems, less reliance on concentrate feeds and things. They're looking at animals that might replicate those conditions from the sort of 50s, 60s, 70s that were in those environments, and that's why they're looking at those genetics. So that's where gene banking is great in terms of having those stored. Like I said, we might not look to use them now, but it's important for potential in the future. There's also, so when we look at the in situ side of things and the actual breeding programs, and how we look at that. So these are terms you might have been aware of already, but looking at sort of kinship and mean kinship, and this is often what breed societies might look at as well. So kinship is looking at a degree of relationship between two individuals. So you've got a mare, you've got a stallion, you want to see how related they are. Obviously, running that through a computer program, but will tell you most breed societies are able to do this, is going to give you a much more detailed result and make it much simpler than you sitting there looking through pedigree records, trying to trace back, etc. So that gives you a good overview of how related two individuals are. We then obviously look at mean kinship as looking at how related one individual is to the whole population. And that calculation can be really useful, particularly when we're looking at gene banking, if we're trying to find stallions that are perhaps unrelated to the population, the ones that are perhaps potential to breed and sort of underrepresented within the breed. Having the mean kinship calculation can be very useful from that side of things as well. So I didn't have a equine example to hand, but basically I just looked at some mean kinships of some sheep examples. So we're the breed society for these breeds, so that's why it was easy for me to get hold of these. And about 10 years ago, these breeds started looking at mean kinship. So the breeders were able to look and see, well, we want to use that ram. How related is that to our females? And you can see here, if we take the top line, for example, which is the it's the Boré breed, and the Soe actually underneath it, you can see the general trend in terms of where they started and where they've got to. So this is basically, there's been a reduction in inbreeding, the mean inbreeding levels within the breed as a result of using kinship, so being more selective in how they breed, making those strategic breeding decisions as they go through. So it does have a sort of positive change. Obviously, this is just a tool that a breeder can use. So I think that's the important thing with any of these things, is that they're tools that breeders can access. We're not removing the breeder's decision. They can still make their matings. This is something that they can choose to use if they want to. It's not a compulsory thing that they have to do. It's just helping sort of inform their decisions and from that side of things. So, like I said, if any of you listen to talks from Dr. Andy Dell, he's talked. He basically set up Sparks, so single population analysis and record keeping. So this focuses on the mean kinship element. Essentially, this is a much more detailed version of the kinship. So the kinship is a great tool that can be used looking at how related one animal is to another, and ultimately they're not related, so we'll breed them together. The risk with that is that obviously you can quite easily dilute genetics. So if you had a really rare stallion that's identified, he's unrelated to everything. If suddenly everyone used him, all you've done is dilute those rare genetics, and you've obviously lost those rare bloodlines. So what you want to try and do is breed the rarer animals together. So identify your rare males, your rare females, breed them together, and then your more common genetics, breed those together. And that's what Sparks does. So it identifies animals of similar mean kinship, and then looks to sort of band those to breed together. So any of you that have seen these sort of Sparks sheets, says increasing number of breeds that use this system. So Cleveland Bay's started with it, and Andy was personally involved with that breed. And now it's done for a number of breeds. I can't remember the exact list now, but Eriskay, Suffolk's, I think the Highlands have started to certainly look at it, and been in conversations with Andy. Yeah, there's several others on the list. I think there's about 7 or 8 breeds now that are using the Sparks system. And basically what it does for the breeder is put it into bandings of matings to be encouraged down to matings to be avoided. Again, it is guidance, and breeders can breed however they want, but it's just to inform that decision making process there. And each animal has like its inbreeding coefficient displayed, etc. But ultimately, like I said, what it's trying to do is ensure that the rare bloodlines are maintained, and the more common bloodlines are sort of maintained, and you're not having that dilution of genetics. Because when it comes to sort of inbreeding and things, certainly in a closed population, you're never going to decrease the rate of you're never going to decrease inbreeding. Once the animals are inbred, you've got that inbreeding level. But what you want to try and do is decrease or the rate of inbreeding, so how quickly the inbreeding is increasing. So you'll see here, so this is just the Cleveland Bays since they've been using Sparks, how their effective population size has increased in terms of looking at the genetic diversity within the breed, and is a direct result of using the Sparks system. But the most, I suppose, critical thing is when we look at the change of inbreeding. So you'll see how, I'm not quite sure how this, I don't know if someone touched the screen and that's where this red squiggles appeared, but it seemed to have appeared, but I'm not quite sure how to get rid of it. So, but you'll see the red line going up shows the trend of inbreeding, and you'll see since the Sparks sort of has been implemented, how that rate has certainly leveled out a great deal. And that's ultimately what we want to try and do, is slow up the process. So when they were just randomly selecting, randomly breeding, you can see how that inbreeding rate increased quite significantly. But they've been able to sort of steady it since, and sort of slow down that rate. So yeah, that just sort of just shows the use of that. I'm just conscious of time, but I did put on about genomics, because I thought I'd mention it because it is something that's discussed a little bit in terms of breeding programs and how these can be used. So obviously what I've talked about in terms of the analysis we do, we can also run what's called a pop rep, so a breed report, where we input the stud data, as I said, looking for stallions that have been most used and things. That's all based on sort of stud book data. So what is available now, and we're seeing it rolled out more and more, is the use of genomics. So collecting samples from your animals. So obviously that could be like tissue, like we've talked about. You can do it from semen, so a DNA sample, whether that's hair, nasal swab for some species as well. there's many companies that sort of are able to do this, whether it's Weatherby's or there's Neogen we've used up in Scotland as well for processing these. And the possibilities are endless in terms of genomics, and we could have many lengthy conversations on what could be done. But what we are able to do, it can give you the true sort of inbreeding levels. We were able to do it shows the example. So we did a project on some North Ronaldsay sheep. So this is a complete sort of population on the island of North Ronaldsay, and there was no flock book data, so no pedigree registrations, nothing was recorded. They chucked out, they had individual flocks, about 7 flocks we tested, but they used to put out about half a dozen rams into each flock. So we didn't know any inbreeding levels or anything like that. So we were able actually to calculate the inbreeding levels of each of those individuals based purely on their genetic makeup. So we didn't have to look at any pedigrees. We didn't have anything like that. So that gave us a really good idea or really clear understanding of how sort of inbred or genetically diverse actually that population was, where we didn't understand that before. And you're able to obviously look at sort of populations in terms of how related the populations are genetically, obviously compare it to other breeds as well. Obviously, there are challenges and practical elements when it comes to the genomic studies as well, in terms of the cost of doing the work and things. But from a breed society perspective, I'm sure this is something that people will be looking at. And even I think the important thing is, if you're not, let's say, thinking about it now, I think trying to collect that sort of data in terms of whether that is tissue, DNA in whatever form it is, so that in the future you might look to turn that into some form of genomic study. I think collecting that data now is important to do. So yeah, any questions? I think we might open it up to everyone now, but
Thank you, Tom. I don't know what the red marks were. I was trying everything to work out how they'd appeared and see if I could get rid of them. So I don't know what it is or how it ended up there.
yeah, I don't know quite. I might be able
I think
to
because I opened share screen up to everybody because it was the quickest way. I think somebody, oh, there you go.
I've got rid of them now.
There you
go. Tom, would your advice be to all breed societies to DNA then their animals?
I think it's certainly a useful exercise to do in terms of collecting that data. So when you obviously, even if you don't necessarily want to do the or you haven't necessarily got the funding or anything like that for the projects, I think having that bank of material is really useful for you. Like if you wanted to, then if you had some funding available, you decided to do a genomic project, you've got the samples there. Obviously there's simple things you can do. I don't know, obviously some breed societies might be collecting anyway for like parentage testing and things like that, but I appreciate some there can be a cost involved, but I think having that material collected just gives you lots of opportunities, and it's easier to sort of almost collect if you have a starting point. When we've looked at genetic projects with other breeds in the past, it's very hard to get people to like go out and sort of perhaps sample their flocks or their herds and things. But I always think if you introduced it and said, well, any new progeny born, and sort of put it in, then in 10, 15 years time, you're going to have a huge amount of data, aren't you, that is there ready to go, rather than trying to do it retrospectively, which I think is challenging.
Thank you.
There's a couple of questions for you, Tom, that have come up in the chat. One is that, do you have a way of verifying the accuracy of back pedigrees prior to DNA testing?
Okay. So prior to
I mean, I suppose we're sort of relying on stud books having kept accurate records.
Yeah, and this is where the whole DNA side of things can DNA doesn't lie, so it's and that's the thing and with stud books, herd books, flock books, it comes down to there can be human input, so human error can occur. We did a genomic project with one breed, and it flagged up two individuals that were quite clearly genetically were not that breed. They were, and it transpired that the breeder kept a few different breeds, and yeah, they didn't realise. As far as we understand, it seemed a completely innocent because they voluntarily submitted their samples for. And if you knew something was wrong, you wouldn't have volunteered to give your samples. So yeah, the male had got in and they didn't realize, and yeah, there was two animals that were quite clearly genetically weren't that breed, but on records and sort of in appearance they had been. So yeah, animals can go through. So the only way you'll truly ever verify an animal's pedigree is through genomics, because there can be human error in any stud books and things when it comes to breeding. But I suppose that's why the whole parentage testing in some cases comes in. But yeah, I don't know in terms of verifying. I suppose verifying pedigree is ultimately the breed society, but the genomics and would be what is the overall definitive truth, I suppose.
And probably sort of building on that Madeline has asked, is SNP testing the way forward? And I know that probably most of the stud books in the UK that are taking DNA samples from the stallions and mares are now moving to doing SNPs rather than I can't even think what it's called now. Whatever the traditional DNA testing was called, which the name has just gone out of my head.
Is it like the
MS
micro?
yeah, MS, isn't it?
Was it microsatellite?
Yes, yeah. Microsats
Yeah.
was what we were doing, and I think most of us are moving to SNPs. Is that something RBST would encourage?
Yeah, but I think that's sort of standard. Seems to be standard practice most of the time now, just because it then gives you greater opportunity and obviously has much wider coverage in terms of what you can do with that data. So yeah, I think that tends to be what people are moving towards now. And I haven't got the figures in front of me, but I don't think from a cost element, I don't think there's a huge difference really from that side of things. So yeah, that's what seems across species what people are sort of going to.
And then I know we've got some American viewers on this webinar, and I know some people are planning to watch it once we get it up on YouTube. And we have a question about, is there a way to work towards a genetic exchange program between US and the UK? I think if some of our rare and native breeds have been exported to the States in the past, is that anything that the RBST are working towards? Or maybe even Stallion AI could jump in on this, and because obviously they work internationally.
Yeah, no, there is. I think there is opportunities there, and there has been stuff that's so some of that is driven by the breed societies themselves in some cases. Yeah, there has been some exchange of genetics over in America. There was a stallion that was what breed was he? Might have been was he a Dales or a Fell that was collected at Stallion AI, and then went over to America, and we also then added him to our gene bank as well. So there was like a sort of collaborative approach from that side. And we sent some stallions over. So I think there's opportunity. I think it, like I said, it depends on to the breed societies, because I appreciate all of them have their own slightly different rules when it comes to animals coming in and things. So some have different restrictions than others. But yeah, Stallion AI will they, like they said earlier, they send semen all over the world from various breeds of stallions, and I'm sure they get others back in as well. So yeah, it is possible. It's just about having those groups working together. So both the individual breeders and the breed societies to see what's best for both populations, really.
And then we've got a question relating to the Exmoor Pony Stud Book, that the Exmoor Pony Stud Book has full DNA records. How easy would it be for them to get into the Sparks program?
So in terms of the Sparks stuff, it doesn't matter. So that is based on the pedigree side of things. So the stud book data is what's used for that. So any breed that's willing that's got the stud book data, then they're able to do that. So so Sparks was previously, like I said, Andy had set that up, and it was relying on Andy sort of doing the calculations and things. So as of last year, so those breeds that are on use grassroots systems, so the grassroots database, breed societies can that is an added tool that you can get through grassroots. So you obviously have like the kinship, but the Sparks tool is the function is there. So for those breeds that are with grassroots, which is obviously the sort of stud book software that I know a number of breeds are with, then they have a conversation with them, because that's relatively simple for that to be set up and accessible now, because it's a tool that they've designed into their platform.
Perfect. Yeah, I think quite a lot of the native breeds, and I know certainly we use it for the British riding pony. So so I think any representatives from the stud books here, if you're on grassroots, then yeah, speak to Margaret and the rest of the team there, and they'll be able to talk you through that. And I know we had, just to drop back to some previous questions that were coming up earlier that we missed. There was one for you, Joe, that somebody was asking how early, I think this was the right question, how early you get a farrier involved in assessing your foals. It was a question that was about an hour ago, so.
Oh yeah, I think that might have been in relation to when we spoke about hoof wall separation disease, which is something that affects Connemara ponies. To be perfectly honest about it, I have very little experience, and I actually hate to say this because it makes it sound like I'm denying that the disorder exists. It obviously does exist, and unfortunately it does affect some ponies. Thankfully, since we've started testing for hoof wall separation disease, and that it's not as taboo a subject, that people now talk about it, and the number of foals born with the disease that are actually affected has fallen dramatically over the last few years, which is fantastic. So we're seeing less and less of it. I personally have no experience of actually even seeing a pony who has the disease, but from what I know about it is that it can be at some stages, it can manifest at any time in the pony's life. So it can actually manifest at the very beginning as a foal, and it can be really drastic. Sometimes ponies can go through their entire life being affected with the disease, and it actually never truly manifests in their feet. You would never know. Apparently there is like a lot of management that you can do, but unfortunately there are some cases where it's so extreme that actually the only option is to put the pony to sleep, because the hoof wall actually does come away altogether. It does completely separate, and there is nothing, even the best farrier in the world, they just can't control it. As I said, that's very rare and thankfully becoming increasingly rare. So yeah, that's the answer to that one.
Perfect. And then there's a question here. I think this is back again to you, Tom. Will the RBST looking to put on any events in the future to try and bring potential new breeders on board, possibly looking at webinars or events linked with established studs to promote more of the native pony breeds?
Yeah, so we have we did some webinars in sort of last year and the year before, in terms of trying to or looking at across the board really, in terms of some of it was the versatility and promoting, but yeah, we're always open to to new events. So we're just relatively recently, sort of not just webinars, but been doing a series of podcasts. So we're always open to new breeders and speaking to people. And so yeah, if anyone has any suggestions or would like to volunteer themselves for anything, then please get in contact with us. And yeah, we're obviously ultimately that's what we want to try and do, is try and encourage people to into these breeds, obviously encourage people to breed new breeders, and yeah, across the whole sort of spectrum. So yeah, something we're continuously working to do. So yeah, we'll hopefully be able to continue to do that.
And I think with the Mountain and Moorland Committee that put together tonight's webinar, I think that's something that maybe they can discuss at future meetings, you know, maybe where there's ideas to work collaboratively with yourselves, because something that we've been discussing in that committee for the last few years is how we can encourage new breeders and the barriers to entry for many of the new breeders. So I'm sure we'll add it to the agenda for discussion at one of
Yeah,
our
no,
meetings.
I think that's yeah. I think the thing is, we try and work at times where I have many of these discussions with individual breed societies, and I think they're all asking the same questions and all facing the same challenges, I think. So I think it is a sort of industry approach that's needed, and trying to bring together the sort of key stakeholders really across all elements to try and to promote it, because yeah, I think it's affecting all the breeds are in the same situation really, aren't they? So I think I think the more voices and the more people behind it, the better. And ultimately as well, from my side, I rely on the breeders, and the breed societies rely on the breeders. We don't actually own any ponies ourselves, so we need the breeders there to showcase what they're doing and to sort of tell their real life stories of to encourage these people into them. So yeah, I think perhaps we can have a separate conversation on that.
Fantastic. And then we've got a question. I think this will be for you, Sarah, and your team at Stallion AI. Is there an age where you see maiden mare fertility start to drop off?
Oh goodness, well, we don't really deal with the mare side of things, but
Yeah, they'll be in the early teens that you would start to
yeah,
expect it. So they're and then really above like 15, that's when they would start to become quite difficult to get in foal. So yeah, you want to be breeding them ideally before you reach to that stage if possible. So that's a rough guide, but they will all be different. It's the same with stallions as well, because some stallions, the effect of aging starts a lot sooner on them, and whereas others, they can still be producing really good semen and really good conception rates into their 20s. So it is variable.
I think it also comes down to management as well, and maintaining good health, keeping them fit. It's not just having them with a healthy diet, it's also keeping them in a fit, healthy regime as well. So you do hear stories next door. Edward will ring and he'll say, somebody's just dropped me a mare off that's 23 and never had a foal, and we end up getting it in foal in the end, don't we? So there are ways of doing it. So it's all horses for courses, as they say. So
yeah, and I suppose if breeders are coming to you who do have an older maiden mare, you will be able to advise them on stallions that you know have particularly high fertility, because
absolutely.
the worst thing would be with an older mare where you've got limited time is using a stallion that's below sub fertility. So at least they could improve the odds from that side of things.
Yeah, absolutely. That's it. And then actually, just while we were talking about introducing new breeders into the industry, we've got a breeders club. You can join. It's free to join. It's on our website, and we have monthly meetings where we have just a bit like this, really, a bit of a get together, and people who are really experienced will share experiences and tips for younger breeders, just to try and encourage more breeding. So if anybody wants to join, you're more than welcome. It's a great little community we've got going. So thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a great thing, because it's definitely, with new breeders coming in, who are looking for, advice and support from older breeders, and they want to pick brains. It really doesn't matter what breed of pony you're looking at. There'll be somebody within your breed who I'm sure will be more than happy to share their knowledge and experience. And hopefully then new breeders can avoid some of the pitfalls that older breeders have gone through, and they've kind of done that already. So yeah, I think that's definitely good, and we can always put a link to that on our social media to your breeders club.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. I don't know how stud books get involved. I think you just have to be a member, but the World Horse Breeding Federation of Sport Horses, they do a Young Breeders World Championships every 2 years. So we actually help the teams train. I don't know if that's something the National Pony Society can get involved in. I know there's a couple of British stud books that are involved, and I think the championships this year are going to be in Germany, but they scatter them all around the world. So 2 years ago it was in Denmark, and that's a really great experience to get young breeders into the industry.
Yeah, it's something actually that we've not considered with my own breeding hat on. I breed warm bloods, so I know about the Young Breeders Championship, because it's something that I know a lot of the warm blood stud books put their young breeders forward. But certainly with my MPS hat on, it's not something I've thought about before. So yeah, again, maybe that's something for our stud book committee that we could take to the British Rider Pony Stud Book Committee and get them to have a look at that, because that could be quite a different opportunity for some of our young breeders that would show them a different way of showing their young horses off, and a good experience for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that would be good.
So are there any more questions? I think that the chat's gone quiet. There's a lot of people thanked all three of our presenters. Oh, that looks like, oh no, that's Martin, the chairman, who's who's commented in the group chat. So if there's no more questions, I'll hand back to Kerry to round up the evening.
Well, I just want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. I think the speakers have been incredible. I just think we've gone right from the grassroots of breeding to some very technical, very inspiring topics tonight. And I think everybody on the chat I've seen some messages flashing up to say how much everyone's enjoyed it. And I think it's been a really great evening. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting us. It's been a pleasure. Anytime.